Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford, and today I'm here to tell you in 5 minutes or less what Hávamál is and why you ought to read it. We all make mistakes as we go through lives. I mean, that's such a cliche that it barely is worth mentioning when I'm running a clock for 5 minutes. But we forget that we are not in our adolescence as a species anymore, right? We've been writing for thousands of years, and some of the earliest literature in the world is wisdom literature, such as the instructions of Shuruppak from Sumeria, or the instructions of Ptah-hotep from ancient Egypt. Both of these books are more than 3,000 years old, and they contain much the same wisdom as you might hear from older people today. But thanks to the writing down of ancient wisdom, we can learn from the experiences of those who have lived before us, in some cases many thousands of years before us. And the unique Norse contribution to that wisdom literature of the ages is the poem Hávamál. Now, Hávamál is attributed to the god Odin, usually known in English as Odin, because the letter th means the th sound, but it's written as a medieval D with a slash through it. Now, Odin is a perfect example of someone to prescribe wisdom for the rest of us, since he has suffered greatly, right? And we often attribute wisdom to those who have suffered. He has sacrificed himself on the tree Yggdrasil, probably. At least he has sacrificed himself on a tree and starved himself for 9 days and nights to learn the runes, a story that he tells in Hávamál. Hávamál also tells of the magic spells that he knows at the very end, but most of Hávamál is taken up not with these mysteries and magic, but with everyday practical living. Now, Hávamál is a realistic document, a profoundly realistic document, to the point that many people consider it cynical in its wisdom. I think that cynicism is not an unfair charge to lay against Hávamál, but really what it is a document that foundationally does not trust that anything is going to go quite like you think it will. But instead of trying to distract us with utopia or with unrealistic, unmanageable recommendations for how to live some quote-unquote pure way, we have recommendations for how to live in a world that is slippery and how to hold firm in it. Now, this often means doing harm to those who would do harm to us, and of course, being a little bit cagey, I think. Hávamál often recommends being silent in dealing with other people, although that's in dealing with people that one doesn't know. It also reminds us that we only learn by talking to other people, not by keeping to ourselves, right? There's no wisdom in the basement. There's wisdom only in converse with other people and traveling and in getting to know other people and other ways of thinking. Hávamál constantly reminds us of the value of our friends. It is intriguingly, for such an ancient document from such a family-oriented culture, not very concerned with family. That is something that I think is missed by people who call this a Viking code of ethics. Hávamál is a little bit revolutionary, maybe a little bit, I mean, this evokes maybe some of the wrong images, but a little bit countercultural for its own time. It also advises against drunkenness, which of course was a vice much practiced in the Viking Age as well as today. Hávamál is really a text of moderation in all things. Be moderately trusting. Be moderately wise. Be a moderate drinker. Be moderately hospitable. Be moderately generous. It's a text that lives in the real world and is for people who live in the real world. And also, I will point out, barely mentions the afterlife. In fact, really doesn't at all. It only talks about this life and treats death as the very final end, with the only bare concept of an afterlife being the survival of one's reputation, hopefully a good reputation, after one dies. Hávamál is easily readable. It wouldn't even take, I suppose I've never timed myself, but it couldn't even take a half hour to read through the whole thing in English. And in my new edition of Hávamál, the Wanderer's Hávamál, you get the Old Norse text as close to the original of the Codex Regius manuscript as is possible, while still using standardized spelling, so you can use an Old Norse dictionary. And it has a commentary in the back in which I explain many of the choices that I've made in the translation, some of the revisions that I've made since my original translation from 9 years ago. And that way you don't have to blindly trust me. Hávamál reminds us in its very first stanza that you ought to peer around any doorway that you want to go through. And so you can peer around the doorway of my translation and look under the hood to mix my metaphors and see what I've done and make your own choices about whether those are the right choices, but you've got the original right there before you in as undiluted a form as possible. Well, I hope that's given you a motivation to go check out Hávamál and the Wanderer's Hávamál if you haven't yet. And from beautiful Colorado, let me wish you all the best.